Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from today. Welcome to Divided America. My name is George Siska for the Siska News Network. I'm trying to move some of these boxes here. I want to talk about pot today. I really do, but there's so many things other I want to talk about. The 0.4 percentage in packages is just not going to work for the industry. I really want to talk about Bob Woodward and the wartime buildup in the Caribbean. But first, I want to talk about what the mainstream media is doing right now. You're not being lied to, per se, but you're also not getting the information to make a competent decision. And I'm looking directly at you, New York Times and CNN, and what I would call journalistic malpractice. Now, in what people familiar what characterize as a tactical move, Trump and his allies are hoping that backing the speedy passage of the measure will allow Republicans to move past the issue more quickly and give the administration an opening to refocus attention on policy efforts that Trump has complained are going ignored. Really, CNN? Really? That a tactical move? Yeah, we'll talk about that tactical move in a little bit. We will. But who's got to be the messenger? Who does it? Is it someone on the right? Is it someone on the left? Central? Whatever. That hooking up with 15-year-old children is wrong. We know it's not Megyn Kelly. I'm sure you've seen her comments this weekend. She defended it and saying it wasn't her comments, but just even I refrain from even saying what was said on her show. But I feel, as a journalist, is necessary to say exactly what was said. And during her November 12th episode this year, the Megyn Kelly show, Kelly stated that she had this information from someone who was very close to this case, that Epstein liked 15-year-old girls. And I realized that this is disgusting. This is her quotes. I'm definitely not trying to make an excuse for this. I'm just giving you the facts. That he wasn't into like 8-year-old girls. She also added, there's a difference between 15-year-old and 5-year-olds, you know. What? I'm sorry. I didn't know there were good pedophiles and bad pedophiles. I mean, is this like the witches and Wicked? I mean, are you going to be popular? I'll teach you the proper ploys and talk to boys. Little ways to flirt and flounce. Ooh, I'll show you what shoes to wear. How to fix your hair at Jeff Epstein's house or Mar-a-Lago. That'll make you popular. You'll hang with the right cohorts. You'll be good at sports. You know all the slang. I'll probably get copyrighted for singing that a little bit, but I ask again, who has to be the messenger? Tucker Carlson? Glenn Beck? Anybody? Who has to tell you, and for it to sink into your head, that the president acts like and is most likely a pedophile? I didn't call him directly a pedophile, but he attributes the attributes of a pedophile. He exudes those attributes. Because that's what the CNN reporter was alluding to, about how people I'll quote her again, characterized as a tactical move with people who are familiar with the matter. Yeah, we're familiar with the matter because we read. We understand. We understand cases, legal cases like Jean Carroll. Last year, this is directly quoted from the New York Times. Last year, the federal appeals court affirmed the jury's verdict, $5 million judgment against Trump, ruling the trial judge did not make errors that would warrant a new trial. Granted, Ms. Carroll wasn't a minor at the time, but does that make his actions any less worse? Now, again, you don't have to believe me. I've said this on the first episode. I said it on the second episode, which I unfortunately had to delete because the audio issue was just what happened was I was trying to stream the show on my computer at the same time as speaking, and because of that there was a reverb, and I learned that that was a desktop audio thing in OBS, and I apologize for that. I shouldn't miss another week, but like I posted, I said with that things I did learn other things, so I will. It's a cell phone. I screwed up, and that's what it is. But I told you this is a work in progress. I got myself a nice mic holder to talk to you. Like I said, who has to be the messenger? Who has to let us sing? I know most Democrats, most independents understand. Even a bunch of Republicans understand how bad of a man he is. But yet we let him run the country. Wouldn't let him around my niece, nephews. Not for 5 minutes, not for 5 seconds alone. But we're allowed to. We let him have the nuclear codes and run the country. With that being said, what's going to be said next week at Thanksgiving? It's going to be a fun one for some of us, huh? Some of us have been asked to bite our tongues because we don't want to argue with family, and that's completely understandable. However, I play poker with people from both sides of the spectrum, both left and right. So I know I can have civil conversations. I know a bunch of people on both sides, I will say, have gone a little too crazy. The left's reaction to Charlie Kirk's death was wrong. Like the way left. We're talking about the way radicals. Not everybody was saying it was a good thing. I sure as hell wasn't. But that being said, people on the right are also been pretty nuts about their beliefs, but we all have our beliefs. All right, so let's just drop just some generalities right now. Let's get specific. And there's boomer New Yorkers that are coming up to New England, and they're worried about Mamdani's incoming policies. Yeah, what devastating policies is driving people away, like you say, right? Like, because it's what I keep hearing from New Yorkers. My father was a New Yorker, and he told me he called me for Veterans Day, and he told me that people were leaving New York. I said, who? Just give me one name. That's all I ask. Is like I know people like to repeat what they see on CNN or on Cisco News Network, but like, don't just repeat what I say. Read, digest, make a decision yourself. Because the potential godsend of universal child care, any parent should understand how important that is, right? It shouldn't be a left-right thing. It's people want to work, they want to produce for this country. To do that, their children have to be looked after by people that they trust. Child care is expensive. I can't imagine how much it is in my old city. It's my wife and I had to make major decisions around childcare, about where we were going to send our kids, about when we can do it, work-wise, how do we do it? But this all goes back to what I was talking about at the very beginning, and that is the mainstream media just they don't lie to you, but they just don't give you everything. This morning's headlines from the New York Times. I wrote this yesterday. This was yesterday's headlines for the New York Times. Was an atrocity and a perfect example of what I've been talking about. About the White House press corps are stenographers, and they're not journalists. They write down everything the president says or everything Carol Levitt says, or they just say that. They don't digest it. They don't research the facts. They just blatantly say Trump said this, Trump said that. It's I thought we were past that. I thought we learned our lesson in 2015, 2016, 17, 18. Journalists, I'm saying we. Now, I understand that this right now seems less than a journalistic adventure and more opinionated, and I get that. And we've talked about that. Journalists have to have opinions too. If journalists didn't have opinions in 1930s, then maybe that's what happened. That's how it feels right now. This feels like 1930s Germany in America. Maybe it's just me. We're going to talk about ICE in a little bit. That's after the break. But back to the mainstream media. One of the major things I've learned, I told you before, I'm in master's courses for journalism at Harvard. And one of the things I've learned is to not quote politicians at length because they drone on about non-pertinent things. But yet, this morning's New York Times, I listened to the headlines while I'm getting my kids ready for school, and they fully quoted a ridiculous quote from the president. And it's just like, why? Why would you even... I understand he's the president and it's somewhat news, but come on. It's such garbage. The verbal diarrhea that comes out of his mouth is... It's sad. And CNN, Fox News, MS whatever they are now, they all have an agenda, right? They're all backed by corporate sponsors, quarterly earnings. Like the algorithm I mentioned in the first episode, they're incentivized to divide us. Where there was a great poet of our time, I think her name is Marjorie Taylor Greene. She said, "We're more alike, my friends, than we are unalike." What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm being told that was Maya Angelou, not Marjorie Taylor Greene. However, Marjorie Taylor Greene did say that this past week because she's being attacked by this administration. Oh, what a deadly web we weave, right? Please stick around. I'm going to take a very short, quick break. I got to make sure Chewy is settled. And then we're going to discuss the pending Southern War. Axis journalism combined with that. So please stick around. Welcome back. Now, I don't know if you can hear this, but I'm going to try. You hear that? That's the war drums. The media is ready. People are ready, right? Ready to fight. Ready to fight the bad guys. I see pattern recognition is one of my specialties. I read news, I consume it, and I've been doing it for years, if not decades. And just recent news, if you read about the Ukraine war right prior to the invasion of Kyiv, the recent invasion, not the invasion of Crimea in 2015. We're talking about the more recent one, when Russia decided to invade Ukraine about a week before. You can read about or even 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you can read about the building up of armed forces along the Russian border, right? They're saying, oh, they're just there for defensive purposes. They're just defensive purposes. And excuse the vulgarity for a second, please, but you don't. There's a saying that I've heard in plenty of movies that you don't put a condom on unless you're gonna screw, right? So they had their massive build up there, and then they eventually crossed. I bring this up because of what is going on in our southern border and what potentially could be another war in Venezuela or any other country down south. Have we not learned from each generation? World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Desert Storm, Operation Iraqi Freedom. Do I need to go on? Afghanistan. And now we're going to go south, and I'm sure the War Department is watching Mexico City closely. And I don't know if you saw the news, but this weekend there was a massive protest in Mexico City. I'm not going to say why. I mean, the reports are Gen Z's mad about safety, security. I don't doubt it. I mean, who knows if there's bad actors there? That's my first thought process, is because it gives us a pretense to start moving south. When I worked for the FAA, I used to tell my old boss all the time, we're headed south for American protections. I feel like I think like Republicans at times. I was a Republican for a very long time. I think like them, and I can see, like, for the safety and security of our country. Sound like Emperor Palpatine? We must go to the southern border and protect, because Mexico can't do it themselves. And if we have to go through Mexico to get to Venezuela, I know there's other countries, but the point stands that we are building up way too much on our southern border just to do nothing. Now, hopefully it's nothing. Hopefully it's just a big bluff. Maduro seems pretty scared, and I don't blame him. I don't condone his policies. I don't condone what's happening there, but I also don't condone regime change. We did that in Iraq, and we saw what happened after ISIS, everything else. Do I have to go into all the bad things? I sure hope I don't. I hope I'm talking to people that somewhat understand what is going on. Now, the access journalism part of this and the mainstream media portion of this. In the Bob Woodward Bush at War series, Bob Woodward of the Washington Post, who famously reported on the Pentagon Papers and basically got Richard Nixon to resign after Watergate. I misspoke about the Pentagon Papers. It was more about Watergate with Bob Woodward. On December 11th, 2003, Bob Woodward interviewed President Bush 8 months after the invasion, and there were no weapons of mass destruction found. Now, this excerpt comes from his third book in the Bush of War series. I'm going to read this to you directly because it really disgusted me. Mr. Woodward asks, have you been misled or misled the American people about weapons of mass destruction? He's speaking of Iraq in 2003. Absolutely not, replied Bush. What happened? Woodward asked. To what? The president said, and I'm going to give a bad Texas accent. To the WMDs and the slam dunk case, asked Bob Woodward. Now, Bush went on the defensive, and Woodward continued. For the last 7 months, the status reports is that we have not found weapons of mass destruction. Now, it had taken 5 minutes and 18 seconds for President Bush to acknowledge that the fact that we had not found one weapon of mass destruction, one evidence of mass destruction, anything. Now, interestingly, Bush then says, I'm probably sounding incredibly defensive all of a sudden. Yeah, of course. Now, this is where I would call it a betrayal. I would love for journalists to weigh in on Bob's tactics. Woodward said he would deal with what he said about his decision to invade in the book due to come out in 2004. Why do you need to deal with this in the book? Bush said. What does that have to do about it? And then later, Bush wanted to ensure the terms of the interview and that his comments were for the book and not for an article in the Washington Post. Now, you got to remember, 2003, everybody's reading the newspaper still. The internet's there and it's building, but people are still really getting information from newspapers. In other words, I'm not going to read a headline. Bush says no weapons of mass destruction. The president was very worried that in Christmas time of 2003 that this headline was going to come out. Bob Woodward says, I would wait. How do you not let the American people know that not only weapons were not found, nothing was found. Not even. Now, Woodward did publish this second book in 2004, right? But this specific excerpt is from the final chapter in his final book in this series, the third book, published in 2006. Do you think George Bush gets elected in 2004 if Mr. Woodward reported this information in the Washington Post? And then there would be more articles about what are we doing there? I feel that the momentum, if you, Bob, reported this, Mr. Trusty Bob Woodward of Watergate, All the President's Men, played by the late, great Robert Redford. I've seen that movie way too many times. It's bad enough SCOTUS, the Supreme Court of the United States, for the first time ever created law in 2000 during the 2000 election, handing the election to President Bush with a margin of 538 votes from Miami-Dade County. Bob, I know you'll probably never see this. I get that. And thank you for what you did during the Vietnam War. Thank you. But holding this information back during my generation's war, it just proves the point of reckless access journalism. It really does. And how many veteran lives could you have saved? Excuse me. I get a little emotional about this stuff because I've had friends have passed. I don't know how they've passed. I have friends that have passed from bombs. I have friends that have passed from diseases. Things got much worse after 2004. You could have prevented a lot of that. Was it worth it for your book that's finally being read 20 years later by one of those soldiers that was over there? Bush was in denial, but so are you, sir, if you think holding this information didn't affect the 2004 election. After our last break, I'm going to quickly talk about how much safer we feel with mass people roaming around in the streets. We're going to discuss ICE next. Welcome back. I believe in groupthink as much as I like to think I know everything, and just like everybody else. But in my experience, when people come together to solve a problem, it usually takes more than one person, and it makes people think diametrically differently. And when they come together, something special can happen. And that's what we're going to end with tonight, because the world is not just broken. It's not just America. But taxes is what birthed this country. Now our taxes are funding other fascistic countries like Argentina. I'm sure many people are aware of the bailout that we've sent $41 billion across down south to help their country, but we're sitting here. That was during the largest government shutdown in U.S. history. Where did they find that money? And that's part of the shell game that I mentioned in the first episode. I have cards right here to play. I'm gonna put that video out as soon as possible. It's a 3-card Monte shell game. I'm gonna show how our taxes and our goodwill is just kind of being shuffled away. But taxes is what I've been thinking a lot about. Taxes are promises, right? Taxes is, we pay our taxes for services from the government, and Congress allocates that revenue. It's something I did in the FAA. We learned a lot about allocations and how Congress gives out the money. Now, taxes also come from revenue streams, and I mentioned the pot in the very beginning of this episode. I'm following up with local hemp producers because I want to. I have a friend who owns a CBD company, and he thinks that his prices won't be affected by the hemp ban, and I sure hope the best for him. I feel like the inventory is going to be less if they really do lower the stocking shelf percentage at 0.4, because that means no vapes, that means no edibles, that means no drinks. But that's a revenue stream, right? Like that's revenue streams are, I don't want to say the lifeblood of America, but they sure help. And if we stop one of those revenue streams, it's a $28 billion industry. I just don't understand how one senator, one senator who can't even stand up straight walking 10 feet if you asked him, Mitch McConnell, quote unquote, snuck in a provision into the bill that to basically eliminate the hemp industry. I say quote unquote snuck in. Who sneaks in anything? Like I as I mentioned with groupthink, in my Harvard classes, so we sit there and we share documents, we write and we edit each other, and then I can see immediately who did an edit or who has a suggestion of something. Does Congress not have this? Before they vote for a bill, they say, it looks like something here was changed. Who changed it? Mitch McConnell. We can't vote for this. We can't. But no, I guess that Google Docs is more powerful than what the U.S. Congress does for our everyday lives. Now, I also bring up this revenue stream because, and legalize marijuana because I forgot to mention this live PD example, which really was the genesis of part of my thinking of how screwed up this country is. I would say pre-COVID, live PD was a very popular show, and you can see the differences easily when it was in Rhode Island, when you can see a police officer pull over someone and they smell marijuana in the car, and the guy's like, I have a card, and the officer's like, okay, go on home. And then you can see in Louisiana or Tennessee, other states, not countries, that same exact, like the producer would shift right over, like, okay, let's see what's going on in Louisiana, and then you see a police officer on top of whoever, black, white, whatever, because they were smoking pot, and then now that person's in jail for God knows how long. And it's just like, what are we doing? Are we a country? Like, I understand states' rights, but what is going on with the I guess not criticism, hypocriticism of I don't see how that works for America. I really don't. And that brings us to ICE and the false pretenses that are the catalyst for this administration. What gave them authority to just start abducting people? Because the president says we're being invaded. We're not. They're they're taking away construction workers, and I'm sure they targeted some bad people. We're not seeing those stories. The stories we're seeing is Home Depot's being raided and construction sites being raided. I have I have news for you. Most criminals don't work hard-paying jobs. Criminals usually wake up and they do criminal things. They don't wake up, go look for work to feed their family, to maybe see the next day. Criminals wake up, they don't go to work. They probably, well, I'm not going to speak for criminals. My point is, we've seen way too many videos of ICE forcefully taking U.S. citizens from their cars because they didn't answer questions. Just this past weekend in Tennessee and in Illinois, you're seeing ICE officers ask for it, and then the citizens are like, no, I don't have to. We have Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights, what we used to. And then you will see ICE agents still smash in windows just because the guy's not answering questions. We have rights, right? The Bill of Rights is what we created this country on, in a way. That's our Fifth Amendment right. It's our Fifth Amendment right to not incriminate ourselves in any way. And if anybody understands the Fifth Amendment right, it's this administration. There's been enough legal proceedings to hear them all say, well, I'll take the Fifth, I'll take the Fifth, I'll take the Fifth. All right, so let's talk about the Fourth Amendment right. Fourth Amendment right is to protect U.S. citizens from unlawful search and seizure. Now I go back to, again, what laws are ICE following? The whim of a president? Like, I'm sorry, but I'm not okay with losing my Bill of Rights that have been enshrined in the Constitution for 250 years because a new reality show president says so. No, I refuse that as a pretense. But yet we allow it. And I'm not saying get your pitchforks and go riot, but I just need you to really think about this when it comes to voting. I know people don't want to hear voting is the solution, but unfortunately it is. That's how this country was built, right? We vote. These past elections, election day was great for Democrats, and we'll see what happens when in the midterms next year. But I just don't understand what is going on in this country anymore. I just can't imagine being a brown or black person. And I say this as a fully privileged white person, right? I trying to have and show perspective on the dire situation we have. Like I can drive down the road and not be worried about, although maybe now because I have this show and maybe I'll put a target on myself at one point if the show ever gets any kind of traction. But I'm trying to show our history as jailers. Go ahead and watch Ava. I'm going to butcher her name, so I'm just going to say the name of the show, the movie. It's called The 13th. I think her name is Ava DuVernay. It's amazing work. Or read Howard Zinn's A People History of America. This book was made famous by Matt Damon in Good Will Hunting, and Matt, that shit did blow my mind. Wow. I mean, imagine having your friend's son deported just because he forgot to mail something in at some point, right? Your friend, not just, that random whatever you call them. I call them humans. I don't call them illegal aliens. I call them humans because that's what we all are. What if that application got coffee on it in the immigration office and John Smith said, oh, well, the application is now denied? Or any other permutation of an application loss that you can think of, right? Like that for our federal government that is working oh so smoothly. I have people in my life who said that they're not here legal and they should be deported. I'm sorry. Let me fix that. I misspoke. I have people in my life who said that if they're not here legally, then they should be deported. But there lies the problem. Our system is so screwed up that when they try to go to immigration hearings, they are arrested and deported right from the hearings from trying to do everything correct. We've seen this numerous times over the past months, especially in New York City. ICE and the Department of Homeland Security are not making us safer by throwing out humans that have been living in our country for years. There could be real aliens out there. What are we gonna do? Are we gonna, if we had to go together, like how hard will brown and black people fight for this country, for humans, right? I want you to think about that. And it's going on from today, tomorrow, about how we treat each other. I mentioned Jesus a lot in the first episode because I am a confirmed Catholic. I'm not a practicing Catholic because God knows they've had enough problems in with their brand, if you will. Go watch Spotlight. Read up on anything about Catholicism. But that being said, the golden rule should apply. Treat people the way you want to be treated, no matter what they look like or what they believe. I have crazy friends that think that but I don't think they should be deported. I don't think they should be hung. I just think they should lose more money to me in poker because they're pretty good at poker. I tried to end this on a funny note. My name is George Siska. Thank you for watching or listening. I'll talk to you again soon.